Hi everybody, Stephen St.Clair here. Get ready for part 2 of mine and Sadie's interview with my brother and sister-in-law, Christina.
Go ahead.
Well,
What was their story?
in talking to the owner of the bed and breakfast, she was telling us that the children, they have prayer time and they pray for their families. And they pray that, this happened to be a private orphanage. We didn't get to pick. It was all picked by the system. But this happened to be a private orphanage. It was a Catholic orphanage, and it was all girls. And, which is quite different from like a state orphanage down there. So the owner of the bed and breakfast was saying they have prayer time, they pray for their families, and that each person will find a family, and that they'll get the right family. And they are seen by a psychologist to evaluate things, and they are asked, or at least the paperwork says that they are asked, do you want to have a family? Do you want to be adopted? And apparently each of them had answered yes. Of course, this is the same thing we've heard from other families too,
right.
And it's documented. And it's not the only thing that's documented. There's just so many interactions with the kids that are documented. So their prep was, at least where they were, knowing that they were praying for a family. Also, we were required to send a photo album, and then when time came closer to travel, we had to update that photo album so that they had current pictures of us, so that hopefully they would recognize us. I think they had seen other kids go through this, and so they knew probably, okay, they're going to spend some time on my hair.
Right.
Because really, they had put those teeny tiny braids in and all the things. It took a long time just to take it out when it was time. They understood. You could tell they understood what was going on by the way they walked in the room. And of course, they were nervous. And our oldest tried to be so brave, and she was so brave. And she walked through that door with confidence. There was a miscommunication on the translation of the paperwork, and we were told she might be more clingy to the mom, to me. And that was not the case. She walked straight past me. I don't even know if she looked at me. She was the first one in the door.
Straight to Paul?
She went straight to Paul.
Really?
Sat on his lap, showed him her doll. I think she had a doll with her, or a backpack, and she was trying to chat with him in Spanish. And the second one walks in, and she is shy, apprehensive, holding the tears back. She's only 4. She's the size of a 2 or 3-year-old. These girls are just tiny. It's not that they're malnourished, they're just little people. And she was just so nervous. She did come to me, but I'm a stranger. But she did it. And then the little one, she was 2, and here she is seeing her 2 big sisters come in. She can't even doesn't even know what family is, probably.
Right.
And the only family she's had in the orphanage.
Yeah.
And, she's crying and unsure, but she lets us hold her and just does her best at 2. It's asking so much. They're amazing.
That's a lot of strength.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are back stateside. Walk us through what that looked like. You are now on your turf. The girls were also on your turf. By the time you guys come home, were you guys close? Was there still some distance?
We had
intimidation.
We had a lot of time within the country to bond. we had a language barrier too to overcome. And so when we spoke some Spanish, you know, and they didn't speak any English, you know, they might have known a word.
I think
they had
the oldest could count to 10.
Yeah, you could tell they were
colors.
they were as soon as they knew. I think they were starting to work on some basic words at the orphanage to help them. But I mean, yeah, but the language barrier really wasn't that big of a deal for, you know, when you have kids that are that young, their vocabulary isn't that big. So
True.
it just took us a little while to learn key words,
Yep.
key words and phrases to get us by. And so, you know, for the first few weeks, we're learning Spanish to communicate to them. And then when we came back, it switches, you know, where we stop learning Spanish and then
You need to learn English.
they're learning
Yep.
English. So it kind of
Yep.
switches, you know, so there's
Yep.
this curve, you know, where we're talking now, okay, now it's their turn.
Yep.
And so it was nice having that opportunity in the country to kind of work through that and, you know, work on relationships with them personally. And then coming back was just amazing because we had let everybody know what flight we were on, all that stuff. And so we were at the airport and it was at the gate there was, I don't even know how many people.
30 or more.
We had
I had family come in from literally out of state. Everybody who could come came. Friends.
Yeah, they had banners up.
Yeah.
Her mom, I mean, they had made these banners. It was awesome. So we walk into this gigantic crowd of people after being on this long flight. We were all exhausted. I mean, but we walked in and it was so refreshing to just see everybody. And the girls, you know, they're Colombian. They loved it. They're attention getters, you know. And so they had family and they were just smothered, you know. And so we were stood at that gate forever, and it was awesome just to see people and then to
Have your village
introduce
and your
it.
tribe waiting for
Yeah,
you
it was amazing.
Yeah.
And we went home that night, and a lot of the family just came with us home, and it was like 11 o'clock probably by the time we got home. It was snow on the ground too when we were driving home. We were all sunburnt and like red, and walking in to snowy day here in Kansas City. But we got home and we ordered a bunch of pizzas, and people ate late, and we put the girls to bed that night. And we just had a lot of family time at that time, just introducing the girls to family.
You had a
and
tribe.
all that stuff, which was
Clan.
awesome, and people supported us, and it was amazing. It was a wonderful experience. So
Okay, so you guys are now home. You're a family of 5.
well, at that time we were a family of 5. Yes.
It's getting late, people.
It's now 12:01 in the morning. So,
But this is when we have our best conversations.
that's
always,
right.
so
Not
we're just
trying-
getting started.
not trying to reveal the next chapter, but what were some early lessons as parents? You're home, you're stateside, you're on your own turf. What were some early parenting lessons that were like hard? Were there some easy no-brainers? Or was it just you had to wipe the slate clean because you didn't know anything?
I'll let her start, and then I'll fill in.
There's a lot of
perspectives.
lessons, and they
Oh,
all
man.
feel huge. Like, okay, so I feel like I had spent a lot of time with kids that age growing up. I babysat kids. There were kids that age at our church, stuff like that. I had a niece and a nephew that I had loved on since they were born, and at the time I think they were like 12 and 15 now or something like that when our kids came home. And I tell you what, I had to learn, okay, so at 4 years old you don't write your name. Okay, I guess we learned that in kindergarten. Okay, that's fine, we can do that. But I had that expectation. Or I also had the expectation that now we're family, so now we operate like a family, but that was only my view of what family was. They didn't know, and here I had made this assumption that they would know what that would look like, and they would just want to participate in that. And that wasn't the case. We're still strangers to them at that point.
A hard thing for me was trying not to treat them the same. You know, They're different development stages, but for me, they're brand new.
Right.
You
That
know?
was like bringing 3 newborns
It
home
is.
because you're starting off
But
at day 1.
It's like,
but,
okay, you have a 2-year-old, you have a 4-year-old,
Yep.
and you have a 6-year-old.
Yep. But I
you
brought
have
all
to-
my babies home at one time.
And trying to figure out, okay, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at?
Yeah.
You know, how do I
Yep.
treat
You
you
were on a
differently?
swivel constantly.
Yeah, it's like, well, and you're trying to figure out personalities and what people like and don't like, and who's going to cause trouble and who's not.
Yeah,
We figured
and as
that out
they're
real
still
fast.
sheltered with
I.e.
any
individual
trauma.
personalities.
Yes.
Exactly.
So-
They're still sheltered with any trauma they
Yes.
might have brought with them too that is not even being exposed yet. So maybe their true personalities weren't even being developed yet.
I'll tell
you know?
a little bit of a funny story of just something goofy that would happen is someone was mysteriously hitting buttons on the thermostat, you know. I'd be like, why is the thermostat, how does this temperature keep changing on here? I was like, I know one of them's doing it. And so I started with the youngest, and I grabbed her hands. I was like, okay, she can't reach the thermostat. And the next one, yeah, she can't reach the thermostat either. I was like, it's got to be the oldest. So I narrowed it
Process of
down. And it was
elimination.
so funny. I brought her over there, and I was like, did you do, you know, oh no. And I'm like, well, somebody did. And I was like, she can't reach, and you know, and the deer in the headlight looked up, I am caught, you know. It was so funny. It was one of those first moments of catching them red-handed, you know. And she was just like, oh, you could just see it on her face. Oh, he outsmarted me.
That's parenting to a T.
It was so funny. It was just one of those funny early things to catch, you know, and it was a funny moment. It was nice. It was something simple, like just the changing the set point on the thermostat. But yet, Dad's watching.
That's right.
Yeah, where was the Ring cameras back then when you needed it? So, you're home, you're established, life changes again. A few years later, the curveball's thrown at you. Something
Yep.
changes.
Yeah, there's a big change. So, in going through this adoption process, and even though we had said we want 1 child to start with, and then we said, okay, we'll take up to 3 children, when it came time for that youngest one to start going to kindergarten, you know, I just didn't feel done. I did not feel done. I wanted more kids. I had told Paul I want 3 or 5 kids, and we said, well, let's pray about adoption. You know, let's see if we're supposed to adopt again. I didn't even question it the first time because we were going to have kids, and that's how we were going to do it. But this time, let's find out, because then you have to consider, is this best for my kids? If I bring another child in here, how's it going to change things?
And would you be able to do 1 again, or are you doing multiple again? And
Right. And
Yeah.
can we wait that long?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
And raise money again, all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who would want to help us raise money again? And we prayed about it for a bit, a couple months, and the answer, when we came to talk about it, I was like, I just don't feel like the answer's yes. I just feel like the answer's no, and I don't know why. And I'll do my best to be okay with that. I don't feel settled.
Did you guys have another be still moment?
Well, in that moment, it was, to me, it felt like God was saying, just let it be. Just, look, I've given you 3 beautiful children, and that's where you're at. And, you know, right now I'm going to tell you no. And I was okay with that. I was disappointed, but I was okay with it because I did feel like I had an answer, and I didn't have to linger.
And we both felt like the answer was no. It wasn't just one of us. It was both of us, after prayerful consideration, was like, I just don't feel like we're supposed to do it again.
Yeah. And then, so I have PCOS. I hope this isn't TMI for anyone. My cycle is not regular. I never know when it's going to come or whatever. I mean, it's just really oddball. And so I finally had all of the kids in school. The youngest was in kindergarten. And so I went to work, I had started a business, and then I stopped it, and then I went to work as contract labor for one of the other clients. And that's kind of beside the point, but by that point I had been calling my my doctor, my OBGYN, every month to say, hey, I don't feel right, I haven't started. And they'd be like, take a pregnancy test, and if it's negative, then we'll call in a prescription for you. And this happened for so many months. I mean, like 6 months, 10 months, it was a long time. And so I did my monthly call this time, and I remember standing at work and rolling my eyes and going, this is so stupid. I'm tired of spending money on this. They know I'm not pregnant. Just call in my prescription. It's been 6 to 10 months straight. Just call it in.
Yeah.
I didn't say that, but that's what I felt like. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just go to Dollar Tree and pick up a test. And so I do that. I go home, and Paul's downstairs working on the furnace or something, and the kids are down there watching TV, and I remember it's SpongeBob. So doesn't have to be part of the story, but I just remember it vividly. And I'm standing there, and SpongeBob has a pet worm. I forget what he names it, Mr. Worm or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. And it turns out SpongeBob has the worm has babies, so Mr. Worm is now Mrs. Worm. And I'm like, well, that's kind of silly. I mean, I like SpongeBob. It was funny. It just made me laugh. And I think while I was waiting for that pregnancy test, those 3 or 5 minutes or whatever, is when I went down there and watched that. And I come up, and the test is positive. And I think I had to sit down. Like, I sat down in the bathroom in a, not quite a panic, but almost a panic, because we weren't going to have any more kids. We thought the answer was no.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous about how Paul would feel about it. Are you game for doing this? I guess we're going to have a baby is what this one test says. What are we going to do? And because it's biological, how's that going to affect our kids? It just terrified me to think about them feeling put aside or something, or like they're not as important or not as special or whatever. I never wanted that for them. So yeah, life changed in 3 to 5 minutes of SpongeBob.
Okay, you have a timer set, whatever, and you go back upstairs and you look at the stick. Was there a delay, or was it like, okay,
Paul, get it now?
And then you now have a choice. You're like, do I just set this aside and consider it a false positive or whatever, or do you go to my brother and like, we need to talk?
I think that's pretty much how it went. I think I went down there terrified.
Did you throw it at him?
No, I
What did you do?
didn't. I was like, I think you need to come upstairs or something. Do you remember?
I'm a little busy right now.
I
It's
don't
like,
remember.
We need 10 more of these.
That sounds
We're
familiar.
going to test again.
It's like, we need a confirmation.
We need 9 more confirmations.
I'll be back. I'm running to the store right now.
I'm getting the most
You picked up a variety of them.
I probably picked up.
I'm getting the most expensive gold-plated.
Yeah, I'm like, how guaranteed are these?
Right.
I want the one with highest guarantee.
So, it's a positive. When did that reality kick in?
I never let it kick in until the baby was born.
Were you worried about
was
that?
We were
terrified
scared. Yeah,
to
we
death
were scared.
that I would lose the baby.
Yeah.
I had baby showers, and we had set up the nursery again. Paul and our oldest daughter and us had spent over 40 hours painting this nursery by hand, and I had all these gift bags in there, and I was like, I don't know if I should even cut the tags off this stuff, because what if she doesn't come, and I don't want to go through this loss. I don't want to put the hope out there to have it taken away and not be real. So for me, it wasn't until she was born, and I knew she was okay, that it was real. I mean, nothing about it felt real to me.
I bet.
I
I'm
just
sure everything
wouldn't
you'd been
let
through,
it.
too.
I loved her to pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but I just
Yeah.
felt like I had to
Yeah.
protect myself from potential hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was difficult, especially for the first couple trimesters, you know, of the first trimester, of course, it's like, can we get through that, you know?
Really?
That to me, I think for me personally, once we got through the first trimester, I took a little bit of a, whew, okay, we
Yeah.
made it through
One
the first
down, two
trimester,
Yeah.
you know, you're starting to feel kicks here and there, those kind of things that were exciting, and
Almost afraid
things
to
we
move at some
never
point, probably.
experienced.
Bubble wrap or...
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was a pretty crazy time, for sure.
So, baby's born, you're all happy, healthy, hunky-dory. Then what?
Well, so I hadn't cycled yet. Sorry for people if that's too much information. But so after, when I was pregnant, I had developed a cyst, and they could see that in the ultrasounds of the baby. And they said, so like 5 or 6 weeks after you deliver, we're going to have to do laparoscopic surgery and remove these cysts unless they like reabsorb or whatever, rupture,
yep.
which please God don't let them rupture because I don't want to go through that pain. And so I thought it was 5 to 6 weeks. Yeah, that's what they told me. So I had to go in and have surgery, outpatient surgery. And then, is that right? Was it that soon after? I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was with this. Anyway, so I cycled once after about 6 months after the baby was born. And then I didn't cycle again, and that was normal for me, you know, based on my diagnosis. But what wasn't normal was with the pregnancy, one of my first signs, I didn't even know this was a symptom of being pregnant, was I would be brushing my teeth and I would just gag. So bad, like every night. And I'm like, what is going on? And then also we used to go to coffee every Monday night while our kids were at this class, and I didn't want to drink coffee anymore. And I was like, that is so weird. And then further along in the pregnancy, I wanted to lay on my back. I do not sleep on my back. I don't like it. I'm a side sleeper. But through a lot of that pregnancy, I had to fight not to sleep on my back because that's what my body wanted to do. So then after this baby's born, it's been 6 months, and, you know, I cycle once and don't cycle again. Even before it's time for me to cycle that second time, I'm having urges to lay on my back. And I'm going, I'm not going to do it. I'm not pregnant. I'm not going to do it. And then once I gave into that, after a few days of that, I had this urge to put my hands on my belly. Like, you know, when you're pregnant and you're feeling your belly. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. That is not happening. Not going to happen. And I can tell that my tummy's getting bigger. And so then this one night, I'm like, fine.
Paul wasn't quite a good cook yet, though, right? Or was he? So you couldn't blame him for that.
Right.
He wasn't established yet.
I ate so healthy when I was pregnant that I only gained like 5 pounds. Like that is the healthiest I've ever been. So I was still on my health kick because I was nursing. And so I'm like, fine, I'll put my hands on my stomach because I want this urge to go away. I'm sick and tired of it. I just, you know, let's just be done with this silly stage. But then there was just more things. And I had a friend who, she and her husband were trying to have a baby. Crazy story, he had actually had a vasectomy. She talked him into getting it reversed. And she wanted to meet up for coffee the next day. And she called and said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be late. And I was like, well, we can reschedule. She's like, no, it's okay. I'll feel better in a little bit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if she's pregnant. That would be amazing because they've been trying for like a year. And I get there Sure enough, that's the case. And at that time, I already had a plan. I was going to go home and take a pregnancy test after I saw her, because if she was pregnant, I did not want to spill the beans to her that, hey, I'm pregnant too, on accident. So we have coffee. It's great. I get to celebrate her. It's so exciting. And then I go home, take a pregnancy test. Sure enough, I mean, and it came up positive. Bam! Before I even set it down, it was positive. And I was only 5 weeks. So we're talking like...
That's really early.
I mean, I knew 2 weeks before that I was feeling that urge of laying on my back, stuff like that. And then there was no denying my belly was getting bigger. I will show you guys in pictures later if you want of me at 5 weeks, and I have a baby belly. And with the first pregnancy, people were asking me 5 days before that baby was born, are you pregnant? Is that what I heard? And I'm like, I'm doing like 10 days, people.
Calm down, come on.
This one, no time to show it all. I mean, it just popped right out.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So
Surprise!
Shocked.
you now have gone through the stressors of adoption. You have a clan of 5, including yourself. God comes back and says, but wait, there's more. Twice. You are a family, you are a clan of 7. Sum up what that picture looks like now, looking back. What does your victory speech look like, if you were to write it? You had so many moments where you were high and low. You had moments where you were called to action, be still.
For me, it's just... there was a song at the time when we were going through adoption called God Bless the Broken Road That Led Us Straight to You. That was kind of we had a blog at the time, and that was kind of the theme for our blog, and that's kind of where it's at, The road feels broken when you're going through it, but when you look back,
It's beautiful.
You look back and you go, you know what? The road had its curves and its twists, but God was right there holding my hand to get me through it. And it's and we all go through, whether it's a issue with adoption or babies or other trials people deal with. It's a matter of letting go and listening and allowing God to guide and direct you through the difficult times, because it's at your worst moments when you need Him the most. And are you listening? Because that's the times when you really need to tune.
Yep.
and not turn your back on Him. And if you do, His hand's always right there, ready to pick you up. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is give it to God, and He will guide and direct. And He has in our family. We're living proof of the blessings that can come through it. And in the moment it's a trial and it's difficult, but on the end you come through victorious, and you see the blessings. There's a lot of hurt that goes through, blessings aren't easy.
That's right.
There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of things that go into blessings. And our family is a huge blessing, and we're living proof that miracles can happen, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And, in a lot of ways, and getting through the adoption process, and then miracle babies, biological babies coming out of it, and everybody's healthy and doing well, so we're blessed.
Now, speaking of that, I don't remember if you said yay or nay. You're pregnant for the first time officially, and then the second time again. Was there a time period where you had to adjust to that reality? I'm like, okay, I feel like we can announce to the world, I'm pregnant.
We didn't
Is that
wait
a
very
hard
long with the
conversation,
second one to announce it. So I got pregnant in February. Found out in March. But the thing is like, I like to do April Fool's jokes. I try not to do them very much to Paul because he doesn't appreciate
That's a
them.
messed up way.
So I've already been thinking since February, I'm going to tell Paul that I'm pregnant as an April Fool's joke. That was going to be my joke. So
How'd that go?
it did not go in my favor.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out the funniest way to do that. But because when we found out we were pregnant was coming up on April Fool's, I didn't want people to think it was a joke when we announced it.
Right. I guess we'll wait now.
With the first announcement, my mom wasn't in the room, and I don't know that I knew that, and so she missed it, and she felt left out, understandably so. And so this time I said, look, I want to make sure my mom finds out first.
Right.
She's going to be the first person we tell. And it had to have been at the end of March, because we went to pizza with her, and we're chatting, and I'm like, well, I got something to tell you, and said, we're pregnant again. And she goes, April Fools. And I said, no.
We're not.
We really are. And she's like, are you serious? Yeah, I mean, I wanted to use it as an April Fool's joke, but it's not a joke. It's for real.
That's perfect.
So you mentioned earlier, with the first 3 beautiful babies, by the time 4 and 5 came, you pretty much had the first 3 nailed down. Like, you knew, like you mentioned, the thermostat. The older 3 they were established. You could tell. So now flash forward, you have 5 girls. You have a buffet of traits.
Personalities.
What was that like now that you have 5 coming into full circle, discovering all their little personalities, all their quirks and curiosities?
Well, I'll tell you.
You feel overwhelmed because you have 5 girls.
I don't want there to be any kind of hidden or representation that the bonding process with adoptive children is a long process. It's not something that you get the children and all of a sudden everybody's hunky-dory and life goes on and it's rainbows and unicorns, because it is not that way. These children have had a lot of trauma. They've had abandonment. They've had a lot of things, and there's trust things you got to build. They have walls built up. I mean, we had walls built up too. I mean, all those things that it takes years and years and years of work. But through it all, it takes a mentality of. And I had to share this with some families who were considering adoption. I was like, look, if you go through adoption, you have to understand you can't view this as there's any kind of escape out of this. You have to view this as these are your children, because they are.
Yep.
There is no, well, hey, this isn't working out.
Let's give them back.
Well, what am I going to... No.
Exactly.
There are times when you go through hell. And you know what? Even with biological children, there's no guarantee that you're not going to have a hard time.
That's right.
We went through some really, really hard times with those kids. And it was difficult. And we've had bonding problems. We've had a lot of things we've had to work out. But none of us gave up. The kids, us, we didn't give up, and we've had a lot of things to work through. So I don't want there to be any like, oh, this is like eating ice cream. It's easy,
Right.
It's not.
No. Right.
Life isn't easy. Throwing together kids that biologically are not the same as you, they process things differently. Their emotions are different than us. Their culture is different. There's so many things that, I mean, you have to be willing to negotiate relationships sometimes and understand where people are at. And it's tough. And even today, we still work on bonding. It is something that will be there the rest of our lives of working on that relationship. But for me, it's one of those, I'm in it for life, you know, and that's the mentality you have to have when you're going. You can't have that escape clause, because there is no escape clause.
Right.
And if you go into adoption with that mindset, there's a good chance you're going to fail, because you're going to go through hell.
Yep.
You're in a lot of times it's going to be a temporary state, and you're going to work through it.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do it. I mean, that's just part of the work. I mean, they're your children.
That's right.
They deserve it. They deserve all the love you can give them, whether you're biological or adoptive. You make that commitment, just like when God pointed at
That's right.
the earth to me, I have a child for you. To me, those children from creation were established to be in this home.
That's right.
Whether they were where they were born or how they were born,
There was a plan.
I didn't make that plan. I certainly had no plan from the beginning that I was going to be going to Columbia and getting 3 beautiful children.
right.
But God knew that,
Yep.
you know, and
And
that's
he knew the
that's all part
struggles
of
you
it.
would face along the way too, and gave you the strength to get
That's
through
right.
them, no matter how difficult
And
it was.
that's part of the hope you have to lay in, that God clearly directed this path. He clearly is going to help us through.
Yeah.
But again, we have to put the work in.
Yeah.
It is not a cakewalk.
Yeah.
Well, and also, that's things that our kids have struggled with. One of our girls is good about telling us how she feels sometimes. Sometimes it's really hard for her, but she was really angry. She was really angry about all of this. She didn't want to hear our stories and testimonies about adoption, because to her, it's a complete loss. It is not necessarily a blessing. They've lost everything.
Yep.
And by the grace of God, they have their biological sisters with them. So many kids don't.
Yep.
So to hear us say, we prayed and God answered our prayers, she would say, then why did I have to, how come I can't be with my biological family? You made me come here. And that is a legitimate emotion. And you have to, I don't understand. Adults make choices. And I'm sorry that happened, and that this is how it is. We were trying to do our best. And, if things were different, we would so want for you to have that biological family, but they're not, and we're trying to do our best.
That's right.
And there are certain circumstances in life where there is no good answer. It just,
Exactly.
and that's the hardest part for anybody to wrap their brain around. Side note on my part, when I was 10, my parents called me out in front of your parents. And I don't know the conversation. You were never really allowed to hang out with the 3 younger, me and you and your brother.
Yeah.
And I remember, I thought I was in trouble. And I think you came and got me, didn't you? Or did my mom?
No, I think I did.
And you came and got me and said, hey, your mom and dad want to talk to you about something real quick. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. And I remember looking at you.
Probably
and
because you thought I told on you.
yeah, you were my enemy, man. I love you. Anyway,
They were watching He-Man again.
you came and got me, and I'm looking back at your brother and my brother, and I'm like, help. I get put in front of, in what was back then all 4 of my parents, so to speak, and then I was told, hey, by the way, this is not your real dad. Okay, explain that to me. I'm 10. In my memory from ages 2, when my mom and who I thought was my dad got married, that's all I'd ever know. And is that a fair comparison to your older 3? No. But there was a harsh reality that I grew up with. It's like, And then flash forward to just a few months ago, I mean, I met my bio dad, and he's not a dad. I'll make that clear. But my half sister called me, and she goes, "By the way, so and so possibly is going to die." So I had to stop for a minute. Like, wow, I've already lost the only person I've known as my father is dead. And now I have to process.
Possibly losing.
So how in the world do I figure that out? I'm an adult. I should be able to figure this out. But yet, looking at your situation, your older three have to process an entirely different reality. They're not in their home, their birth country. They're in a foreign country. But the difference is they had two parents that said, "I love you unconditionally." Sometimes, I guess what I'm trying to get at, we all come to that moment where closure is what it is. It just is. And you take your family for what it is, what you have, and what it will be, and you just hold on to it. Because it can change.
It can change. And you do, like, thinking about what you're talking about with your biological dad, when I hear you say that, what I'm thinking is you're having to let go of what could be. That maybe you still have hope for what could be, and now you're realizing that's not going to happen.
I think even with the first death last year, he felt that way.
Well, yeah.
Like, we didn't live here and experience the things you did, so there's always that hope in your mind. This person could change.
Yeah.
I believe that God can change anyone, no matter what happens, any situation.
Right.
He is the miracle maker. But you always held on to that little bit of hope that someday that would happen. And when he was gone, he's like, there's no more hope that that will happen.
And I guess the saving grace through both circumstances of fathers, certainly one of them, I had zero relationship with. The second one, not so great. So I lost one completely, wishing it could have been better. The second one, I'd cut ties 24 years ago, after I truly came to an understanding that, Mom was right, Uncle was right, Aunt was right, Grandma and Grandpa were right. He was scum. So like you said, though, I guess there was always that fragment of hope where maybe he'll change. Maybe being on death's doorstep I need to go back and fix my mistakes. He was never in that place to ask for that.
And I think this brings up a good topic too. Your mom was always afraid that there was always that fear. I don't want to give you too much information. I feel like you have a right to know this information, but there's always that fear that no matter what we say, you're going to reach out to him. Do you guys face that still too? Like, you have the names, you have the information. Do you worry about that with the girls, that they will want to reach out, or do you feel comfortable with your relationship and knowing we could get through that together too if they ever do ask those questions?
I've always been very open with the girls as far as one thing I think the adoption agency was real good about helping us with is being honest is the best policy with your children, building trust, not hiding things. For me, I'm not hiding things, but I do have information that I'm waiting for them to be old enough to process.
There's a maturity level there.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're 16 years old. Well, here's all your information.
Yeah.
Go find it.
Yeah.
No, I'm waiting for them to be adults, and I can hand them the information, and they can process it, and they can do what they want with it. But whenever they've had, and really it comes down to, I'm waiting for them to ask the right questions, and then I reveal what they want, you know?
Right.
And not
when they're 10 years old.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to hurt their development, and, you know, those kind of things, and yeah, eventually all the paperwork I have is going to be in their hands, you know? And I'd have, what a wonderful thing is as an adult if they could have an opportunity maybe to meet some But who knows? I mean, we don't know what the circumstances are. Clearly, things weren't right for them to be in the process they were, so I don't want them to get wrapped up into anything that would hurt them. So that's why I guard it now. You know, last thing I'd want to do is get them in some kind of situation that would be detrimental to them. So I have to be mindful of those things now. So when they're adults, they can process that information and do what they want with it.
Well, those are adult decisions.
Yeah.
Like, even though that's their story, those are adult decisions. Those aren't decisions that our child can like maturely make.
They can't understand the consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
It's emotional at this point.
Yeah, you can't.
You know, they have to understand the full context of the consequence of opening that door.
Yeah,
And if they want to open it, that's their choice, but they need to be fully aware of the consequences of opening the door.
that is a very hard door. It's not a door you leave either. It's a door you leave open or shut.
Yeah.
Sometimes the door is ripped off its hinges, and then you're like, oh, well, now what do I do with this? I can't close it. I can't prop it open. I can't leave it halfway in the middle. Is there a window that goes with this door? You know,
Well,
there's
that's
no
why
escape plan.
That's why we went the process we did, because we wanted a closed adoption to help. We didn't want to have this fight and struggle through their childhood. You know, and again, you know, when they get to the proper age and maturity, they can make the decision to search if they so desire. But for now, I mean, it's my responsibility to protect them, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for the dead air. Having the family that you have, I'm trying to craft this the right way. What level of appreciation for what you've gone through do you have? Like, has all of this shaped... You're going to let me struggle, aren't you? You watched me make a mistake earlier. Does that mean, like, you guys have literally, as you said, been through hell and back. Would you have gone through all of that again? That same hell, knowing what you know what I'm saying? Is that track right? It was undoubtedly hard, and it will continue to be hard.
You want first?
I mean,
You can go
I would
first.
do it again. The years were very hard. The years have only been a little bit easier just the last couple of years, to be honest. And I hate to say that because I don't want people to be afraid, but like Paul said, you've got to put the work in, and you don't know when that is going to ease up.
Yeah.
You don't know when you're going to get a break. But would I do it again? Yes, I would. Would I tell everybody they should do it? Absolutely not. You cannot go into it thinking it's a hunky-dory, everybody loves everybody, because they don't. They don't. You're all strangers with your own story, and you're trying to make the American family out of it, and it doesn't look like the American family. And even to people on the outside, like inside, it cannot feel or look like the American family, but especially when you're outside, the kids are probably aware that I don't look like the other families. To me, I don't notice now.
Right.
But the kids might still. And they're going to constantly have that reminder.
Has there, since you mentioned that, has that come up between older 3, younger 2?
There's to give people perspective, there is a large gap in age in our kids. So our older ones are all older teenagers, 16 and older, and our younger kids are 8 and under. So there's a very large gap. So the little kids, they are just now processing what does it mean to be adopted, and they haven't even asked why or anything like that, because they just haven't thought that far ahead. These have always been their sisters.
Yep.
Are you worried about a conversation? You have to come from the younger two.
I'm worried that they lack the maturity to be sensitive in the questions they ask, because we have had that a couple of times and had to say, you don't talk like that, or you don't ask a question like that, and here's why.
Yeah.
And it's just lack of maturity.
Even in our own family situation, we've had to remind our two girls, it's like, look, family is family. There's no different. It's, we may all be different in our own rights and respective things, but in the end, we live under one roof. We're all one family.
That's right.
There is no, and as much as I have encouraged all 5 of our kids to go out and be their own person, and you're going to bring back to the table different perspectives. Like Josh moved out of state to take care of his dad. He was very narrow focused in his own life, and
anxiety ridden.
He had to go take care of a dad that could have died from stage 3 or 4 cancer. So he became like, I don't want girlfriends, too much drama. No, I need you guys to take me. Now it's like, he has his license, he has a job, he has his own car. So it's very quickly, he's becoming his own person. And now he's realized what family is. And he's like, I asked him, I said, hey, if you ever think about moving home being the operative word, because that's where family should be.
Did you guys ever have issues? I know we did, and for my own reasons, but did you guys ever have issues with disciplining differently or feeling guilty? So like in our case with my older 3, I was the cause of a divorce that went wrong because of some mistakes that we made. So when they were back in our home, I felt like the 2 that were with us all the time, it was naturally easy to discipline them. It came naturally to me. I almost was afraid to discipline the other ones in some ways because I was trying to make up for things that they would have been through, or afraid to be too hard on them because of what they'd been through. Almost like you were protecting them more than, does that make sense? Did you ever face that at all, or was it just...
Learning how to discipline was a challenge. You know, from an outsider's point of view, sometimes you see unruly kids and you're like, man, why don't they beat that kid? Where's the spankings for that kid, you know? And you know what? Some kids, no matter how many spankings you give them, it don't matter.
Are you laughing because the 2 that you're talking about are yours?
You have to,
one word, genetics.
And just you have to learn that every child is different. Things work for one that don't work for the other.
Strategy.
Right.
And that's the same thing with discipline. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, and so,
We try to be really consistent and cognizant. But the thing is, with the older ones, like I said, I felt like we expected more of them than what kids that age would typically be able to do.
True.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like came across as them not being up to par, because we hadn't raised them from birth, and all we have is this little bit of paperwork on them to tell us anything, and it doesn't tell you the whole story. So I will tell you one thing that worked for all of the older kids, and now that my younger kids are in elementary school, I can use this, is writing sentences. They all hate that. I mean, oh man, you lay down some sentences and you will get some attitude, but you know what? They don't want to do it. And so I think that's one we'll pull out of our hat again soon.
Yeah.
But being able to adapt is a big deal, and it comes with, especially in adoption, because you have to be willing to adapt, because you don't know what you got. They don't know us, we don't know them. You know, you have to.
It's a learning process.
That it is. You got to be willing. You have to be willing to change. It's not a my way or the highway. It does not work that way.
That's right.
Has
We've
to be
sat
give
down
and
with
take.
our kids, I don't know how many times, and said, this is not, you know, we were trying to do the best we could. We were trying to do things differently than our parents, and we feel like we're kind of screwing up right now because none of us are happy right now. We've sat them down and said, there are certain things that we cannot bend on because we are here to protect you. We are your parents. We are not your best friends. However, I honestly wanted to know how they feel. You know, we're all a part of this family, and we all have to make it work. And I don't know how many times they get that glazed over dad look because dad's still talking an hour later, and they're like, please. But
Just
now
beat
that
me,
they're
Dad.
becoming adults, they're thankful for that time. They're like, I remember those conversations and that you put us first, our needs and our wants, and said, hey, we're willing to listen to you. You're willing to admit that you
Just
don't
don't
know
have to
everything.
do the talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I share some other things? I don't know if
Yes.
you have more questions, but there's really a huge part of this that's missing. And it's just because you don't know to ask the question is all. So I know Paul shared his testimony of starting the adoption process. That was never a problem for me. Being in the process and waiting so long was very difficult. And I don't want to say it was harder on me, but because of also my diagnosis, there's physical things that play into that. But so you asked about when we switched lists. You do not have to include this in your podcast, but I want you guys to hear this from me and from us because it's such a big part of this family that you may not have gotten to hear. So we had been waiting 3 years for a baby. Rolls around, it's about, I think it's between Thanksgiving and Christmas of that third year, and we're already down. I'd been to the doctor just, you know, like because things aren't normal, so they find out I'm developing some ovarian cysts, which I don't know that I've ever had. If I have, then they just dissolve or they take care of themselves or whatever. And he says, this one's growing and you're probably going to have some pain, and we'll give you until February, but by then it's probably going to be the size of like an orange, and you're going to feel it and you're going to be in pain, and we're going to need to take it out. And we want to do that before it bursts because that's going to be even more painful than just removing it. And I'd never had that before. So I'm already down because no children. I know I'm going to face all the family again at the holiday. There's that pressure to be so happy around the holidays, but we said we're not going to decorate this year. I cannot hang up stockings again. I don't feel it. I think we had covered up the baby furniture by that point, probably for quite a while, because it was getting dusty. We had closed the door. We were shutting down. Not because we didn't think we weren't going to see this through, but because there was no end in sight. And we are sitting in a Hardee's, and I get a phone call from a family member, and I'm saying, hey, what are we doing for Christmas? And my family, who lives 20 minutes from us, says, I don't think we're going to be able to get together for Christmas this year because we're really busy. And I've never been around, I've never not been around my family for Christmas. And you're telling me you can't make time to celebrate Christmas? You have 5 kids and we're not getting together for Christmas? I'm not important enough for you to make time? And I know that's not what they meant. I know that's 100% how I took it. And I cried in that Hardee's. Like, I couldn't do it anymore. My tank was empty. There was nothing left. There was not even hope. There was direction, we felt like, but there wasn't hope. And that's when we had this conversation of, let's stop talking about this adoption because it just hurts. Let's just not talk about it. Let's tell people we don't want to talk about it. And at the time, I felt like I was losing a child. And I only say, like, at the time, being on this side of having children, it would be different.
Right.
But I'd never felt a loss like that before. And so in my mind, I was losing a child.
Yeah.
And there was no hope.
And repeatedly as the months went on. It's
Yeah.
like a constant loss.
Yeah. And also a constant reminder because my friends are having babies. And even one of my friends' moms asked me to throw a baby shower for my friend. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. You know the situation we're in. I don't think I can do that. And I had to tell her no. So there's just all these things. And on top of it, medical things. Now I'm facing surgery. And so Paul and I decided, I went and talked to my boss because also that's right at the same time somebody at work had said something inappropriate and I cannot remember what it was, but it was the last straw. And I had to let my boss know, I can't do this. I need you to step in because this is not right. And also, my boss is the same religion, and some of the other people there were too. And he offered to do a special prayer for me. And at that point, I was like, that's fine. I'm just trying to not feel anything. But if you would like to do that, I will accept that. And so he and another guy offered a special prayer for me, laid their hands on my head, and offered a special prayer. And just knowing kind of that they were in my corner was helpful, but also they've been clued into, look, this is what's going on. And he had said, hey, go home and read these scriptures and fast about them and outline them. It was Hebrews chapter 11. And I'm like, okay. And in my head, I was thinking, yeah, I might do that, but that again requires me to continue in this process, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I went home and I told Paul about it. And we had asked for prayers at church for the medical side of things for me because I didn't want to have surgery. So do you want to share your part of that?
Want me to pick it up?
Yeah, you pick it up and then we'll go back.
So she came home and told me what was going on, and she told me about Hebrews chapter 11, and I was like, okay, whatever. So that was on a Friday. Well, Saturday morning comes along, and 5 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken, and the Lord impressed upon my mind to get out of bed, which I did, and He told me that if we would study Hebrews chapter 11, which is if you go by faith, this person did this, by faith, this person did this, by faith. So it's all about faith and how the Lord used their faith to accomplish something. That's what Hebrews chapter 11 is all about. And I was told that if we would study, pray, and fast about that she would be healed. And she wouldn't have to have a surgery. And so I never wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It does not happen for me. I'm not a morning person. So I was up at 5 in the morning on my knees at the side of the bed with my scriptures open. And it said, by faith, Moses did this. I mean, there's a whole list of them. And so I went through and documented, found each story that went. So if you go in there, it's a good faith project. If you ever need a faith project, go into Hebrews chapter 11 and find each story that by faith the Lord, they did something. There's probably around 20 of them in that one chapter. And so I went in there and I just started going through each one, finding the story, reading the story. And so by this time, Chris woke up eventually and was like,
I'm not a morning person either.
what are you doing? You're just out of bed. I don't know. It was probably 7 in the morning by this point. I don't know. And I look up at her. I'm like, I've been up for a while. The Lord kind of woke me up, you know. I said, oh, really? Okay. So, and I told her what happened, and she's like, whoa, okay. So we did it. We did this faith challenge. We stepped out in faith, and in so doing, she was healed. The cyst went away. She was healed of that cyst. She did not have to have that surgery. Before she was scheduled to have the surgery, she had another scan, and it was completely gone.
Completely gone. Completely gone.
So it's another one of those faith things with the Lord is there watching.
Huge blessing.
But how it ties in to the kids is because my tank was empty, but I knew God was telling us to keep going. I, for months, had this mental picture of, and I was able to tell Paul this eventually, that I was standing at the edge of a cliff, like just a very deep chasm. And, so deep that it's dark at the bottom. And it's a wide chasm. And it's jagged and nasty down there, just with rocks and stuff. If you were to fall, you would definitely die. You would be impaled. And if you weren't impaled, it's so deep that you just couldn't survive. But on the other side of this very wide chasm is Jesus Christ looking at me and calling me to step out. Take a step. I'm here. I'm gonna see you through this. You're not gonna fall. And I felt like I was teetering on the edge of falling into that chasm, and I knew that it was despair and that I couldn't get out. It would be more difficult to get out of that than to wait and trust and continue to have faith. And there are so many times I was afraid I was gonna fall. And then, that was scary to me, because how do you get out of that? You can't see what's across the way. And
You just have to trust.
literally, Jesus was there saying, I'm here. Please don't fall. Please don't let yourself fall. I see you're leaning. Please don't fall. Please just keep your eye on me. If you keep your eye on me, you won't fall. I know you see what's down there and it's bad. Just keep looking at me and we'll get you through this. And I needed that Christmas. I needed somebody to believe that we could get through it. So that was my strength, was the testimony of being healed of the cyst was really major. It was the bolster I needed to get myself upright again and prevent falling into that despair.
Yep.
And it wasn't long after that we decided to switch lists, but the fact that Jesus was patient and never took his eye off of me. I knew he saw all the things that were hurting, and he was still saying, just keep your eye on me. I promise, look, I made it across. I'm going to get you across. Yep. Just keep your eye on me. So that is my big testimony with the big girls. And then with the little girls, well, the fourth one in particular, Paul and I had decided that when the answer was no to adopt again, that we were going to stop pursuing having children altogether. We never did any more fertility treatments after we decided to adopt. We never did. And I had even talked to my doctor and said, hey, look, I'm getting into my mid-30s. Do you think there's a chance I could get pregnant? Do you think I should do some fertility treatments? I'm fine either way. Just tell me your opinion. I don't want to miss an opportunity. And she said, no, if I were you, I wouldn't do it. You've already done them. It can put you at risk for other things. If I were you, you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
Why don't you just be fine with your 3 kids? I'm like, that's fine. I'm fine with my 3 kids. I just want to make sure I'm not missing an opportunity. So that was the end of that conversation. And Then, like, a couple years later, I had this dream, and there was this little child. I was sitting in a rocking chair. It's this blue rocking chair right there in my living room in my dream. And this little child that's like under 2 kind of comes close to me and looks up at me. And I can tell they want to sit on my lap. And I'm like, oh yeah, come on to my lap. That's fine, come here, I'll pick you up. So they toddle over to me and I pick them up and I hold them and I rock them and we're just hanging out. And in that dream, I knew that was my child. And it is the only time I've had a dream where when I woke up, the weight of that child in my arms was still there, even though I was awake. And I had something to say to God about that when I woke up. And it didn't go away. That weight was there after 3 days. And every day I was saying, God, why did you do this? You told me no. You told me we're done. I want to be happy with the 3 kids I have. I've chosen that. Why would you do this
like
to
a
me?
slap in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we actually had some friends who were coming over a lot at that time, and they had a little girl who was almost 2. I was sitting in my rocking chair in the living room. This little girl looks up at me. I say, hey, you want to come sit with me? She comes, sits on my lap, we rock, and I was like, oh, that's what that dream meant. You know, all this time I'm thinking it doesn't mean anything, but boy, it was the exact same scenario. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. This family's special to me. I'm so glad I have this connection with this little girl. And then I just kind of tried my best to let things go, but I sure never forgot about that experience. But I really think after I found out I was pregnant, after that 4th one was born, that was God telling me there's more to come. I have another child for you. And that was my child in that dream, and I knew it. But it never was gonna, I didn't see any way that it could be, but it was. And you know how God is eternal, and so he works outside of time. So that's why I had that, it was real. Anyway, but if I can say it, I'm so sorry. There's so much about this. Something else.
Take as much time as you want.
Okay. So we have shared
This is your story.
Okay, our adoption testimonies and story multiple times. And I never knew how our girls really felt about it. One of them told me, I wish you wouldn't share that. Did I say that already? And I said, well, why? And she was in 4th grade at the time, and she said, my best friend didn't know I was adopted. And I was like, what? You guys are in the 4th grade. Your best friend can't tell that you're adopted? I blew my mind, okay? And so I was like, well, I guess, if it gets her upset, then I guess I won't share it. So then we kind of switched to sharing the testimony about, a few times I've shared the testimony. Paul happened to share it this particular night at church about getting pregnant with the 4th and 5th. And somebody came up to him afterwards and said, I don't think that you should share that because it makes sure other girls feel bad. And I could tell by the looks on their face that they feel bad. So now here I am. I can't share about God bringing 3 kids into my life. And now I can't share about him bringing in. I'm just saying, you let people tell their story.
That's right.
And sometimes it makes people sad.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But you don't tell me that I shouldn't be sharing it.
That's right.
Because that's not right to do that.
That's right.
It would be wrong of me to not share it, I feel like.
There's multiple chapters to the story. You have to see the whole picture.
That's right.
It's like the
And
rainbow.
each chapter of that story could help someone else. And for you to hold that back because of what other people think or say, you're doing yourself a disservice, your kids a disservice.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, that's one of the big things for me that you asked about, would I do it again, and that's one thing that I love about this journey. Not only would I do it again, but I love sharing about it. I love helping other people who are struggling or are considering, and that process, and helping them see reality.
right.
And what is the reality of
Right.
the situation, because people need to know realistically what you're getting into when you get into this stuff. And it's wonderful, it's awesome, it's hard, if you're not strong, it will literally tear you apart. And you have to be strong. And please do it, because it's awesome.
You have
Yeah.
But be strong.
support
Be
base,
strong.
too.
Yeah.
Be strong.
What do you think is the main, obviously God would be first and foremost, but how do you think, what set you two apart to have made it through this and be who you are today because of it?
I would say a big thing is our commitment to each other, in that I don't see our relationship as temporary or something that can break. I see it as something that I've, like anything, you have hard times in your relationship, but again, I don't have it in my mind that I have the opportunity to turn away from her. It's stuff you got to work through. There's, and of course, everybody's different. If you're in an abusive relationship or all those kind of things, that's different. That's not what we've been through. We've had a great relationship together. Communication is so important.
And don't schedule it.
Communication, and it's truly a gift between Christine and I, because we do communicate really well together.
Yeah.
And that's what has made our relationship really work well. Is the nights we're up till 2 or 3 in the morning just trying to work through things.
Doing the hard work.
Work through the hard stuff.
And being willing to have the hard conversations and the tears and the fits, and you're angry and you're still willing to sit down together and work it out. You have to do it.
Even after 10 o'clock at night.
10:30, telling you, 10:45.
Yep. So,
Your window's getting close.
but yeah, you can't give up. I mean, there can't be a give up in you. So it's
On the kids or each other.
That's right.
For people who don't have a spouse or whatever, we have seen single parents go through it, and they fight for they fight for their family. They
Yeah.
do not give up.
Yeah.
And having that support, knowing, oh my gosh, I know all these other families, I think for me, I needed to have that, see other families go through the same process. They don't have the same trials we do. We don't even talk about it. But I know it's not all hunky-dory, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because they're not shouting it from the rooftops that it is. But that's
true.
okay. We see
That's
them
true.
make it, they see us make it, and it makes us all stronger.
And do it together.
one of the saddest parts that I saw, I think, going through the adoption process, was seeing a family that you could tell had the wrong expectations going into the process. They went through, they got their children, they came home, and every time we saw them, because we used to get together with Colombian groups, I mean, they had the deer in the headlight look, and like, where's the exit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hated seeing that.
prepared.
It's like they didn't come in with the right perspective, the right attitude. You have to have a realistic perspective of adoption, otherwise you're gonna be in a very difficult situation, and it's gonna be hard to be successful.
Absolutely.
So that's important. So
Is there anything else that we haven't already talked about that you guys want to share? Is there any advice that you would give other people? Is there anything you want this message to be about that you feel needs to be said?
not that for me, for me, it's just what I've already stated, just going into the process realistically, and not setting up false expectations for yourself or for your children, and honesty, communication, all those key things that you need to have in place, stability in your own lives. If you're not stable, how are you going to expect children to come in and be stable? don't have them be in a situation where you're unstable. And I'm not, I mean, everybody, if you look back in our lives, we
didn't know what we were doing.
No, but
we had a good support.
But we had,
network.
but
Exactly.
I'm talking more about commitments, you know, and not setting yourself up for failure. You know, seek truth.
Yep.
So.
And love unconditionally, no matter how hard
That's right.
it is.
Be willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
It's not easy. That's really important.
I don't know that I want this on the record, but just the relationship with you guys gives us a lot of hope. Always hoping that things would work out between us, but not knowing how to get there. Like we didn't know. We didn't even really fully understand what went wrong, let alone how
to
you
fix
it if you don't even know what's wrong. Gives me a lot of hope still if trials come up that look, time, it sucks to lose 20 years, but if it gets you to where you can step into a good place, it's worth it to keep thinking about it and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one word really that sums that up, and it's family. I mean, every single one of us is different in our own right, or who we are. Like, I like certain things that you don't like, and so on and so forth. But when you think about the family pie as a whole, it's beautiful, because it's our individuality that brings so much to the table, so many different perspectives. We're going on 2 hours and 20 minutes now with this podcast, and minus my faux pas that I made earlier. I learned a lot, and I remember in 2009 when I met your oldest three, I knew you guys had something special. Now, do I wish that things were different then, unlike they are now? Yes. But your family had to grow. Our family had to grow.
Our family had to grow. Their beginning was almost our ending during that same time. So.
And we've all been through hell. We've all torn hair out, and we've said things that shouldn't have been said. We've had conversations that went past 10:30. God forbid that be quick, but it's you got to do the book work.
Yep.
To do the lip work, and I'm thankful for where we're at this point in our lives. And do I wish we could go back and rewind time? Sure, but maybe I'd be different now, and I don't want to be different. I want to be better in a better way, but I want to celebrate the family we have now, because hard times are in our future as we get older, not necessarily easier times. And I stare at that every day in the mirror. We all know humanity is short, and that's the hard part, because that means family has a finite meaning, unlike the infinite meaning we wish it would have. But anyways, thank you for sharing, setting the record straight.
We love sharing our stories, so glad for the opportunity. So.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be your testimony is speaking to us and to me in ways that I didn't expect either. And it has nothing to do with adoption. And I can
really
tell,
doesn't.
I can look at him saying some of this stuff, and I'm like, it's why you wanted to do this. He has had it on his heart that we need to talk to Paul and Chris. And it's probably for reasons that God knows. It's not just the other people out there too, but it's also us. So
We all need and have, or will have, that be still moment, and
We've had a lot of those lately.
It's an everyday thing. It's
Yep.
like if you just be quiet,
Mm-hmm.
you hear the beautifulness. Sounds all around you.
Yep.
So, thank you guys for sharing.
No problem.
I have not meant to make this hard for you guys by some of the questions. There's a few questions I didn't ask. I'm like, no, you're gonna mess that one up. Don't do that one. But in all seriousness, this has been a good lesson and a good story, good testimony on family, faith, believing in the impossible, and now what has become possible. And all of our children at some point are going to grow up, go their own ways, have their own families, and I want us all to love every second of it. Because we are a family now.
I agree.
It's taken too long.
Yep.
So, Sadie,
Yes,
are we signing off?
we are.
This is Stephen St.Clair signing off from the Crafted Quill Podcast.
Sadie K. Frazier from the Daily Escape Podcast. See you on the flip side.
Peace out.